My name is Grayson Hall, and last weekend, my daughter got married. I didn't walk her down the aisle. I didn't give a speech. I didn't pose for pictures or get handed a slice of cake. I didn't even get an invitation. That part still stings, the absence of it. Not the lack of a seat, but the message hidden in that absence. When I asked Monica why, my wife, still my wife at the time, at least on paper, she didn't even blink. She said, "It's just a wedding. You can watch it from home. Just a wedding." As if that moment wasn't supposed to be the culmination of everything we built. As if being a father of the bride was some outdated ceremonial footnote, easily skipped. I remember staring at her then, trying to catch even a flicker of regret in her eyes, but all I saw was detachment. Clean. Final. Like she'd rehearsed it. So I did what she said. I watched it from home. I ironed my shirt that morning. The same white one I had planned to wear to the venue, back when I still believed an invitation might come late. I adjusted the navy tie Lila had bought me for Father's Day 3 years ago, the last one we celebrated with cake and laughter, before distance became the third member of our household. I even polished my shoes, though I never left the house. The suit jacket hung on me differently now, a little tighter around the shoulders, a little looser at the waist. I looked in the mirror and saw a man trying too hard not to look forgotten. At exactly 11:30, I sat on the couch, my laptop propped up on the coffee table. The stream hadn't started yet, just a static image of the floral arch they must have spent a fortune on. White orchids, pale roses, soft gauze draped between them like the whole thing was suspended on a sigh. I opened the bottle of sparkling cider I'd bought months ago. It had dust on the label. I wiped it off with my sleeve and poured a glass, setting it beside me like I was toasting something. The living room felt smaller that day. The silence pressed in from the corners like it was trying to make me smaller too. I shifted in my seat when the music began. Soft strings, classical, tasteful. Then the feed cut to the inside of the venue. My eyes went straight to the front row. There was Monica, in that deep blue dress she always said she'd save for something special. Laughing. Laughing like this day had no ghosts. Beside her was Camden's mother, the kind of woman who wore diamonds like sunscreen. Thick, reflective, untouchable. They leaned toward each other, two halves of the same polished coin, whispering behind manicured fingers. Not a glance spared for the empty space where I should have been. And then there was Lila, my daughter, my girl, standing at the edge of the room in a gown that made her look like the last moment before a snowflake melts. She was stunning. Breathtaking. But I saw it, the tightness around her eyes, the way her smile trembled just at the corners. She wasn't holding a bouquet. She was holding herself together. And I wasn't there. I wasn't in the pictures. I wasn't in the program. I wasn't in the goddamn building. When the music swelled again and the guests rose, I leaned forward. The camera angle shifted. A man in a tailored suit took Lila's arm. Camden's uncle, I would learn later, and walked her down the aisle. My breath caught, not in jealousy, but in grief. Not because someone else walked her, but because she let them. I wasn't missed. I was replaced. That's a different kind of mourning. They reached the altar, and the officiant made a joke about blended families and modern love. The room chuckled, and I sat stone-faced on the couch, fingers clenched around the stem of my glass. The vows were next, or at least they were supposed to be. The audio glitched. For a full 30 seconds, all I could see were mouths moving, shapes and syllables, but no sound came through. Just the rustle of my own jacket as I leaned closer, as if I could lip-read my way into the moment. But that silence? I knew it. I'd lived in it for years. The kind that stretches across dinner tables, across car rides, across entire seasons of marriage. It wasn't just the stream that cut out. It was my life. I kept watching. Because what else was there to do? The camera panned across rows of smiling guests, touched briefly on Monica's perfectly posed posture, then zoomed in on Lila's face. She smiled, nodded, repeated something I couldn't hear. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. And then, just as the officiant lifted his hand to pronounce something, probably the part where everyone claps and the music swells, the stream glitched again. The image stuttered. Froze. And in that frozen frame, everything changed. Lila's mouth opened. Not in joy, but in a scream. A wine glass airborne. Monica standing, face twisted in shock. And Camden, turning away, mid-step, as if he couldn't exit fast enough. I stared at that image for what felt like hours. My reflection in the laptop screen layered over the chaos like a ghost. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just watched. Watched the frame that no one curated. The moment that no one invited me to witness, but that arrived anyway. Unfiltered, unguarded, undeniable. My silence, all these years, had finally echoed loud enough to split the room. And now, even through a screen, even in a suit no one saw, I had seen everything. They always say divorces don't ruin families, silence does. I used to think that was just something people said to make themselves feel better about giving up. But now I understand it. Not just in theory. I lived it. Silence didn't come crashing into our home one day like a wrecking ball. It trickled in, slow, like water under floorboards. Monica and I didn't explode. We evaporated. And it started, I think, around Lila's senior year. That's when the house began to feel uneven, unbalanced. Like every conversation had a weight limit, and I was always tipping us too far. Monica changed during that year. It was subtle at first. New books on her nightstand, new perfume, longer days at work that turned into networking events I wasn't invited to. She'd come home with stories about professors, classmates, old colleagues she reconnected with. I'd ask how the class went, and she'd answer with half a smile, her eyes already past me. You wouldn't understand, she said once when I asked what strategic marketing entailed. It's not really your lane. I don't think she meant it to cut, but it did. I never considered lanes. I just considered family. I paid the bills. I showed up. I was present, but I wasn't enough. That's what she started saying more often. You're too rigid, Grayson. Too plain. You don't dream big enough. Dreams. I had them. They just didn't look like hers. Mine looked like dinner on time, a roof that didn't leak, Lila's dance lessons paid for ahead of schedule. Mine looked like putting in overtime at the engineering firm, so I could replace our rusty dishwasher without dipping into savings. I thought that mattered. I thought being the man who never left meant something. But somewhere along the line, that became background noise. She moved forward, and I, by staying still, was left behind. Still, I stayed for Lila. Because when it came to her, I was more than enough. Or at least I used to be. I was the one who taught her how to ride a bike, who held her steady until she found balance. I was the one who sat through every recital, even when she missed the notes or got stage fright. I was there, not just physically, but fully. I made her birthday cakes from scratch until she turned 16. I built the shelves in her room for her art supplies. I drove her to college tours while Monica worked weekends at her internship. I never needed thanks. Just space at the table. Just recognition. And even when Monica's family made me feel like an accessory, like a placeholder in every photo, I stayed quiet. I figured it was just tension. Temporary. I told myself they didn't know me. That eventually, I'd earn their respect. But you can't earn respect in a system designed to exclude you. So when the wedding plans began, and I noticed my name wasn't included on anything, no save the date, no seating list, not even a group chat, I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just asked why. One evening, while Monica stirred pasta on the stove and scrolled through her phone like she was performing both tasks for an audience, I asked, shouldn't I be at the tasting? She didn't even look up. You make things awkward, she said, like it was a simple fact, like she was telling me the sky was blue or the pot was boiling. It's better this way. You know how tense things get when you're around my family. I didn't respond right away. I let the words settle, heavy and final, like bricks being stacked to seal a wall. Then I asked the question that scared me more than any other. What about Lila? Does she want me there? And Monica, God bless her cold efficiency, didn't even blink when she said, she's fine with it. Fine with it. Like the absence of her father at her wedding was a scheduling conflict, not a wound. That night, I went into the garage and sat in the dark for nearly an hour. I didn't cry. I just thought about every ride to school, every science project I stayed up late helping with, every time she crawled into my lap after a nightmare. And now somehow, I was the one that made things awkward. In the weeks that followed, the divide only grew. I tried to talk to Lila. I asked if she had a minute. She said she was busy. I asked if we could grab coffee. She said maybe, but it never happened. At dinner, she stayed on her phone. When she smiled, it didn't reach me anymore. I told myself she was stressed. That planning a wedding at 24 was overwhelming. That I was still her father. That love like ours doesn't just disappear. But maybe love doesn't vanish all at once. Maybe it frays. Maybe it unravels until you're left holding a string and no one else remembers what it used to be attached to. I still remember the day I found the wedding website. Monica left her laptop open on the counter. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for the grocery list. But there it was, pictures of Lila and Camden, smiling in vineyards, dancing in golden hour light. Every caption gushed about family, about legacy, about a new chapter. My name didn't appear once. Her father, it read, would be escorted by a close family member. Not even father figure. Just escorted. I scrolled through photo after photo, trying to recognize the version of my daughter in them. She looked happy, but in the way people smile for brochures. Too polished. Too staged. I wondered if she felt the loss yet. If she even knew something was missing. The worst part wasn't the exclusion. It was the quiet compliance. No one protested. No one fought for my place. I didn't expect Monica to champion me. But Lila? I thought she might. I thought some part of her, the little girl who once made me promise to walk her down the aisle even if I had a broken leg, would remember. But she didn't. Or she buried it. And maybe that's worse. So I stopped asking. I stopped hoping. I bought my own suit, booked the day off, and prepared to watch the whole thing from the same couch I'd fallen asleep on 100 times waiting for them to come home. That's how we got here. Not with a bang. With a silence so loud, it drowned everything out. The email arrived at 7:42 p.m. on a Thursday. No greeting, no sender name, just a subject line that read, Lila and Camden's big day party hopper. The little emoji felt like a slap. The kind of overly cheerful thing people throw in to pretend something isn't as impersonal as it clearly is. I clicked on it and found nothing but a link. No note. No apology. No explanation for why the man who raised her, bathed her, taught her to drive in the high school parking lot every Sunday morning, was being offered a seat in front of a screen instead of at the ceremony. Just a sterile link and a date. Saturday, 11:30 a.m. sharp. Live stream provided by some upscale event vendor with a fancy name and a tagline that read, Be there, even when you can't. I stared at it for a long time, unsure if I should laugh or cry. Be there, even when you can't. Like I just couldn't attend. Like I had a scheduling conflict or a passport issue. Not that I'd been shut out. Erased. Replaced. No, this was the consolation prize for someone too inconvenient to seat. I didn't click it right away. I left the message unread for hours, as if that might delay the sting. But it didn't. Nothing ever does. Saturday came with no surprises. The sky outside was overcast, the kind of dull gray that makes the whole world feel muted. I woke up early anyway. Showered. Shaved. Dressed with care. A navy blue suit, white shirt, polished black shoes. The same ensemble I would have worn if I'd been at the venue in person. I stood in front of the mirror, fixing my tie, wondering if Lila would think of me at all as she got ready. Wondering if she'd remember the time I walked her through the house in her first pair of heels, holding her arm so she wouldn't fall, both of us laughing while she pretended to be on a red carpet. I turned the living room into something ceremonial. Cleared the coffee table. Opened the curtains. Adjusted the laptop so the glare wouldn't wash out the image. Then I reached for the bottle of sparkling cider I had stored away for a someday that never came. No one else would toast me, so I poured my own glass and raised it to the quiet. Then I clicked the link. The stream loaded slowly at first, buffering like it was unsure whether I belonged there either. Then, the screen opened onto a scene so beautiful it hurt. White chairs arranged in perfect rows. Lanterns hanging from olive trees. A floral archway that looked like it belonged on the cover of a wedding magazine. Everything was pristine. Perfect. Curated. I spotted Monica right away. She was in the front row, wearing the royal blue dress she once told me she was saving for something life-changing. She sat beside Camden's mother, the two of them already laughing like old friends. Their heads tilted close, shoulders bumping, bonded by something that had no room for me. The camera panned slowly across the venue, catching glimpses of guests smiling, adjusting ties, brushing lint from lapels. People I didn't know. People who didn't know me. People who would raise glasses and laugh later without ever realizing the father of the bride had been demoted to spectator. I searched for Lila. My heart was already racing. She appeared just off-center, stepping into the frame like a vision. She looked breathtaking. Pale silk clung to her frame like moonlight. Her veil fluttered in the breeze. For a moment, everything else disappeared. My chest swelled with something I couldn't name, pride, grief, joy, all tangled into a knot I couldn't undo. But then I noticed the way her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the bouquet. The way her eyes darted, scanning the crowd. Not for me. I knew better than to hope. But for something. Or maybe someone. Then he appeared, Camden's uncle. I would learn later. He stepped forward and offered his arm. Lila nodded, lips tight, and took it. Just like that. No hesitation. No pause. No space for what could have been. He walked her down the aisle, every step erasing the version of that walk I had imagined for 24 years. I leaned forward, fingers pressed to my lips, watching my daughter walk away from me in more ways than one. The officiant welcomed everyone, his voice bright and polished. "We are gathered here today," he began, launching into the expected rhythm. He made a light-hearted comment about blended families and modern love, and the audience chuckled. I didn't. Not because I didn't get the joke, but because I was the punchline. Every word felt like it was folding me tighter into a box labeled obsolete. I reached for my glass, took a long sip, and waited for the vows. But then, something odd happened. The screen flickered. The video stuttered. I thought it was my internet connection at first, so I checked the Wi-Fi. Full bars. Still, the audio cut out. The camera showed Camden speaking, mouth moving, lips forming words that never made it to my ears. Lila followed, her voice likely trembling, but I couldn't hear a thing. Just silence. My own breathing filled the room, harsh against the stillness of the scene. I reached out instinctively, touching the edge of the screen like it might help. Like I could will the sound back. But what struck me wasn't just the glitch. It was the way that silence mirrored something deeper, something I'd lived with for years. I watched Monica lean in toward Camden's mother, whisper something that made them both smirk. I watched Camden avoid eye contact with Lila even as he slipped a ring onto her finger. I watched Lila smile the kind of smile that photographs well but feels empty when you're the one wearing it. And in the middle of all that polished pageantry, I felt a shift, like something beneath the surface was cracking. Then the screen froze. I blinked, waited. It didn't move, didn't buffer, just froze. And what it froze on wasn't some cinematic kiss or triumphant shot of hands raised in victory. No, it froze on something messy, human, painful. Lila's mouth opened, mid-scream or gasp, I couldn't tell. A wine glass suspended in midair, its arc defying gravity. Monica on her feet, face twisted in alarm. And Camden, turning away like he had somewhere better to be. The picture held like a painting, and I just stared. The moment everyone would try to forget, captured in perfect digital clarity. A silent scream on a still screen. I sat back. My heart pounded, not with confusion, but with confirmation. Something had gone wrong. Something I hadn't seen, but had always sensed, finally tore open in front of everyone. And me? I wasn't just watching a wedding. I was watching the truth crawl out from under the lace and candlelight. That stream didn't just show me a ceremony. It showed me everything unravel. The screen stayed frozen for so long I started to wonder if it was me, if maybe my laptop had crashed, if maybe I'd blinked and missed something vital. But no, the internet was solid, the battery full. It was the stream that died, not the device. That image. Lila mid-scream, the wine glass flying through the air like a comet, Monica on her feet, her expression twisted with horror, and Camden turning away, was etched into the screen like a crime scene photo. I didn't touch anything, didn't refresh or close the tab. I just stared, because deep down, I knew something had cracked, and that still frame was the fracture exposed to daylight. Up until that moment, I kept telling myself I might be overreacting. That maybe there was some reason I hadn't been invited, some explanation that would, with enough context and emotional gymnastics, make sense. Maybe Lila didn't want drama. Maybe Monica thought she was protecting me. But now all I saw was the truth bleeding through the decor and the curated Instagram-ready smiles. Lila's face, right before everything broke, said more than any conversation we'd had in the past 2 years. And I had watched closely, more than they knew, more than they wanted me to. I saw the subtle withdrawals. How she grinned so hard her gums showed, proud of her new smile, showing it to everyone who would look. But on that aisle, walking slowly in that silk gown, her smile wasn't joy, it was a performance. a mask. And now, frozen in the moment, everything shattered. I wondered how long she had been pretending. I kept rewinding in my mind the pieces I'd seen before the stream went dark. The officiant joking about blended families. The polite chuckles that followed. Monica whispering, always whispering, into Camden's mother's ear like they were narrating a private show no one else was smart enough to understand. Camden's eyes shifting constantly, never landing on Lila for more than a second. There was a moment during the ring exchange when Lila looked directly at him, held his gaze a beat too long, like she was waiting for something, reassurance, maybe, or conviction. But Camden blinked and looked away. That was when I first felt it. That tug in my gut, the same one I used to get when she was little and tried to lie about sneaking cookies from the jar. That something is wrong feeling. Except now, she wasn't hiding chocolate chips behind her back. She was hiding disappointment behind a bridal veil. The stream didn't resume. Not that day, not that night. I refreshed it every hour like clockwork, thinking maybe they'd post an update, a replay, a statement. But nothing came. The event page went blank. The vendor's logo sat there like a smug shrug. I kept the tab open anyway, just in case someone thought I deserved to know what happened next. But no one did. And yet, I couldn't let go of the image. That frozen second had more honesty in it than anything Monica had said to me in the last 5 years. In it, all the facades collapsed. In it, I saw the truth no one wanted me to see. That's the thing about being quiet. People think you're not paying attention. They think silence means apathy. But silence is where clarity grows. It's where the noise filters out and the details, the little, uncomfortable truths, rise to the surface. I'd spent years being silent. Not because I didn't care, but because every time I tried to speak, I was told I was too intense, too serious, too much. So I shut up. I let Monica take the spotlight. I let Lila drift. I let myself become the backdrop. But silence doesn't mean blind. It means listening so deeply that you hear what others don't dare say out loud. That frozen frame played on repeat in my mind. Lila's face, half scream, half revelation. Like something had snapped inside her in that exact second. The kind of break you can't patch with apologies or champagne toasts. Monica's reaction, frozen between fury and fear, told me this wasn't how the day was supposed to go. She'd planned every detail, no doubt. She'd built a wedding like she builds everything. Meticulously, aesthetically, with a sharp eye and a tighter grip. And now the control was slipping, live, for everyone to see. Camden's turn, mid-stride, felt like betrayal in motion. He wasn't frozen in regret or surprise. He was moving, choosing to leave. And that said everything. No one called me. Not Monica. Not Lila. Not even a text to acknowledge what had happened. It was like they all vanished into the chaos they tried so hard to choreograph. But I sat there, in my full suit, tie still straight, shoes still polished, holding the last unedited image of the day. And maybe I wasn't meant to be there. But somehow, I was the only one who truly saw it. The silence in my living room that afternoon was deafening. Outside, cars passed. A lawnmower buzzed somewhere down the street. But inside, all I could hear was the sound of years collapsing into one unmoving frame. I didn't pour another glass of cider. I didn't move to change clothes. I just sat with it, with the truth, with the realization that the smile Lila gave them that day wasn't a gift. It was a warning, and no one, except maybe me, caught it in time. I didn't know how long I'd been sitting there, staring at that frozen frame. The screen hadn't changed. It still showed Lila mid-scream, wine glass suspended like some elegant weapon in the air, Monica's face twisted with a kind of horror that couldn't be faked, and Camden, walking out of the frame, his back turned like a punctuation mark at the end of a sentence I never agreed to write. I moved once, just enough to click the touchpad. Nothing happened. The video wouldn't resume. No buffering. No spinning wheel. Just stillness. Like even the internet didn't know how to continue. I hit refresh. Same screen. I opened a new tab, typed in the event vendor's site, and searched for the stream. Gone. As if the whole thing had been scrubbed. But the image was still here. Burned into my laptop, my memory, my chest. It was haunting, but not in the way you'd think. Not because it showed a disaster, but because it showed the truth. A truth too raw for wedding albums or edited highlight reels. My phone buzzed on the side table. I didn't reach for it at first. I thought maybe it was some system notification, a useless calendar reminder, or worse, Monica, with a perfunctory explanation crafted to protect whatever reputation she still thought mattered. But then it buzzed again. And again. I leaned over and picked it up. Marcus. My nephew. Lila's cousin. A message from him blinked across the screen. You watching this? Total meltdown. A second later, one from Avery. My niece. Glass shattered. Bride crying. Camden walked out. It's a disaster. And another. Did you see Monica? She screamed at Camden's mom. Someone caught it on video. My thumb hovered over the reply button, but I didn't type anything. What was there to say? That I saw it? That I knew? That I'd known long before any of them? That the image they were just discovering now was something I'd sensed coming for years? I just sat there, letting the words hang on the screen like distant echoes. They wanted my reaction, but silence, ironically, was the only honest response I had left. I looked back at the screen. The frame hadn't changed, but it didn't need to. I studied Lila's expression again. Not just the scream, but what lived underneath it. The tight pull of her mouth. The disbelief in her eyes. That was heartbreak breaking through. Not embarrassment. Not inconvenience. This wasn't a tantrum, it was realization. She had just seen something she couldn't unsee. Maybe it was the texts. Maybe a whispered confession. Maybe a look exchanged between two people who thought no one was watching. But something inside her broke, and the scream followed. And Monica, God, Monica. Her face in that frame was a blueprint of control lost. That open mouth wasn't confusion. It was rage. I knew that expression. I'd seen it in our kitchen, in our car, across dinner tables where I didn't finish my sentence fast enough. It wasn't the scream of a mother heartbroken for her daughter. It was the scream of a woman watching her script catch fire. Camden's mother must have said something, or not said something, or reacted wrong. And Monica, always poised, always calculating, snapped. Camden turning away was almost poetic. The kind of cruel clarity you only get once the music stops. He didn't try to explain. He didn't reach for Lila. He didn't even pretend to pause. He turned, mid-movement, clean, cold. Like this wasn't the first time he walked away from discomfort. Like retreat was his default setting. It wasn't the walk of a man stunned by betrayal. It was the walk of a man exposed. The whole thing was unraveling right there on the screen, and yet no one reached out to me with honesty. Not Monica. Not even Lila. Just extended family watching from the wings, forwarding chaos like gossip. But for me, this wasn't viral content. This was my daughter. This was the moment she realized the world Monica helped her build was made of glass. And she just watched it shatter from the inside. Still, I didn't move. I couldn't. My chest was tight, like all the years I'd swallowed disappointment were pushing back up through my ribs. I thought about all the times I bit my tongue when Monica cut me down in front of her family. All the Sunday dinners where I was talked over, brushed aside. Every party I wasn't introduced at. Every time someone said, "Oh, I didn't realize you were Lila's dad." Like they'd expected someone taller, louder, richer, more impressive. More like Camden, maybe. But none of them were here now. None of them were sitting in this silent room, staring at a digital ghost of a moment that refused to disappear. I was. And maybe, just maybe, that was because I was the only one willing to sit with the truth. To look at it, unblinking, while everyone else scrambled to pretend the day had gone according to plan. I opened a notepad on my phone and typed a few words. Not for anyone else. Just for me. I was present, even when they tried to erase me. Then I deleted it. I didn't need to document it. The moment was already carved into my bones. I don't know how long I sat there like that. Long enough for the sun to shift, for the light to slant across the floor. Long enough for the battery to dip below 20%. Long enough for the silence to become something else, something almost sacred. Because in that moment, I wasn't a ghost anymore. I wasn't the uninvited father. I was a witness. And what I witnessed was real. I closed the laptop slowly. Not out of frustration. Out of respect. That image, ugly, raw, unplanned, was the first honest thing this wedding had produced. And it didn't come from a toast or a dance or a speech. It came from a scream, from a thrown glass, from the turn of a man's back. And in that moment, I finally saw Lila clearly. Not the filtered version Monica approved. Not the polished adult clapping for appearances. I saw my daughter. Hurt. Awake. Alone. And maybe, just maybe, she was finally starting to see me too. The live stream never came back. Not a flicker. Not a single update or courtesy message saying, "Due to unforeseen circumstances, the broadcast has ended." Just a dead link and the echo of a wedding that imploded in real time. But the internet? Oh, the internet didn't rest. Within hours, it became its own kind of chapel, one where people knelt to timelines, swiped through chaos, and shared pieces of the truth like communion wafers. The first clip I saw came from someone's Instagram story. A wide pan of the reception hall, lights low, music still playing as voices rose in sharp, pointed confusion. You couldn't see the glass fly, but you could hear it hit. That sharp, crystalline shatter that told you something had gone wrong. And then, through the chaos, Monica's voice, shrill, unmistakable, yelling at Camden's mother across the head table like it was a courtroom. She was never good enough for your family. Monica barked, and it echoed even through the shaky camera. So you filled his head with poison. Someone tried to pull her back, but Monica shoved the hand away, eyes wild, mouth still forming words as the video cut off. I didn't blink. I played it again. Then again. Not for drama. Not out of spite. But because, for once, the version of Monica that had always lived behind my closed doors was on full display for everyone to see. Then came the texts, screenshots spreading like wildfire across Twitter and TikTok. Lila and Camden, caught in a confrontation backstage just minutes before the ceremony. Apparently, someone named Eden had been texting Camden for months. Eden wasn't just some name in his past. She was still present, still active. The messages weren't vague. They weren't flirty misunderstandings. They were explicit, detailed, plans, memories. One message even read, "Can't wait till this charade's over." Sent the night before the wedding. And Camden, spineless to the end, hadn't even deleted them. One clip showed Lila holding his phone, fingers scrolling, her mouth twisted in disbelief. "Who is Eden?" she whispered. Her voice was tight, but clear. "You said she was nothing. You said that was over." He didn't deny it, didn't argue, just snatched the phone back and said, "It doesn't matter now." That was the moment, I think, when the scream was born. The one I saw frozen in the live stream. The one that burst out of her not from anger, but from a grief so immediate it didn't have time to put on grace. And then came another video, this one blurrier, shot from a side angle near the bar. One of the groomsmen, drunk, red-faced, slurring, spoke into someone's phone as if the world wouldn't hear. Camden's been renting that second apartment for months, right near the marina. You think Lila doesn't know? Come on, man. We all knew. I paused the video. That part. We all knew. Not her, apparently. Not my daughter, the one everyone was dressing like a doll, placing on a shelf for show while the man she was about to marry lived a double life that everyone else considered part of the package. And yet I'd been the one deemed too awkward, too quiet, too disruptive to the energy of the day. Meanwhile, this was the circus behind the curtain. And they didn't invite me because I might have ruined the illusion? No, I would have ruined their control. And then came the video that stopped everything. A private moment, somehow caught, somehow posted. I didn't know who recorded it. Maybe someone in the bridal suite. Maybe a vendor with no sense of boundaries. But there it was, Monica, red-eyed, shoulders tense, pacing back and forth, heels clacking against tile. She was talking to someone out of frame, maybe Camden's mother, maybe Lila, maybe herself. I didn't invite Grayson, she snapped, because he would have just embarrassed us. He's never known how to belong in rooms like this. Rooms like this. I played that sentence 5 times, just to be sure I heard it right. Not because it surprised me. I knew how she saw me. Knew how often she scanned a room to see who was watching before she took my hand. Knew how hard she worked to polish our lives into something more aspirational. But hearing it aloud, so plain, so cruel, was different. It wasn't whispered behind my back. It was flung like a weapon in a moment of panic. And she meant it. I sat in the dark, the screen's glow painting my face in soft blue. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I didn't throw the laptop across the room like some betrayed husband in a movie. I just let it settle. Let the honesty of it wash over me. For years, I had wondered if I was crazy. If maybe I had imagined the distance. If maybe I had misread every half-smile, every passive-aggressive comment at dinners, every time Monica called my love for Lila performative. But I hadn't. I saw it all, felt it all. And now, the world had seen it too. And I hadn't said a word. Not one. I didn't clap back. I didn't post a rebuttal. I didn't reach out to anyone with "I told you" SOS or moral high ground monologues. I just sat there in my suit, the one meant for a day I was excluded from, and let the silence speak for itself. Because sometimes silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it's the space where truth finally echoes, where people hear what they couldn't before. I didn't need to vindicate myself. That frozen frame, those video clips, that leaked audio, Monica had done the work for me. And Lila? She had seen it too. Maybe not fully. Maybe not consciously. But you don't scream like that unless something in you wakes up. I poured myself another glass of cider and raised it to no one. Not in celebration, but in clarity. Because after all the speeches that were planned, after all the photos that would never be posted, after all the toasts that went undelivered, the most honest moment of that entire day was one that no one had prepared for. And I had a front row seat. Even from home. It was 2:17 a.m. when the phone rang. I wasn't asleep. I hadn't even made it to the bedroom. I was still on the couch, still in the same suit, the tie now loosened, the top button of my shirt undone. The living room was dark except for the soft blue glow of the laptop screen, still open, still paused on that same ruined moment. I didn't want to shut it off. Not because I liked looking at it, but because it felt like the only honest thing in the house. That frame had given me what years of explanations never could, the truth in one captured second. So when the screen of my phone lit up and her name appeared, Lila, my breath caught. I didn't move right away. I just stared at it like it wasn't real. She hadn't called me in months. A few cold texts here and there. A busy this weekend, or sorry I missed your call. Polite distance. But this? A call at 2:17 in the morning, after her world had collapsed in front of hundreds of people? This was something different. This was her reaching for something. Or someone. I answered on the third ring, my voice caught between exhaustion and something rawer. Lila, I said, barely above a whisper. She didn't say anything at first. Just a long breath on the other end. And then it came, choked, unfiltered, broken. Were you watching? I closed my eyes. The question didn't need explanation. We both knew what she meant. I said quietly. I didn't need to ask which part she was referring to. The wine glass. The scream. The exit. All of it. I'd seen it. I was still seeing it. Another pause. Then her voice cracked in half. I'm so sorry. There it was. Not, I'm sorry you weren't there. Not, I'm sorry for how things turned out. Just, I'm so sorry. Like the kind of sorry that stretches beyond one event and reaches back through years of silence. I sat up straighter, pressing the phone tighter to my ear. For not inviting me? I asked, my voice calm. Not bitter. Just honest. She sniffled. A ragged breath followed. For not seeing what you always saw. That stopped me. I thought you were just too quiet, she said. Too hard to read. Like you didn't care. But maybe you were just paying attention. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. The suit jacket rustled around me. My heart ached at the sound of her voice. Raw, real, no filter. No rehearsed lines. This wasn't the Lila from the engagement videos or the bridal shower posts. This was the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest during thunderstorms. I always paid attention, I said. That was the whole point. Silence stretched again, but it wasn't heavy this time. It wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that had weight and purpose. Like we were sifting through all the years that had passed, trying to find pieces we dropped along the way. He told me he loved me the morning of the wedding, she said suddenly. But it didn't sound like love. It sounded like strategy. Like he was making a move on a chessboard. I said nothing. Sometimes silence does more than sympathy. And Mom, she continued, her voice tightening, she kept saying how important it was to present well. To represent the family right. That if I just held it together, everything would work out. Even when I showed her the text from Eden, she said it didn't mean anything. That I was overreacting. That all men get cold feet. Did you believe her? She hesitated. I wanted to. I really did. I wanted to believe she was right and that I was just being emotional. But when I saw him shrug, like it wasn't even worth explaining, her voice caught again. I saw everything you tried to warn me about. All at once. I rested my head in my hand, fingers pressing into my temple. I wanted to tell her I'd known. That I saw Camden's charm for what it was, performance. That the way he shook my hand without ever really looking at me told me more than his polished words ever did. But I didn't say any of that. Because she already knew. You always just watched, she said. Like you were waiting for me to see it on my own. I was, I admitted. Because I knew you wouldn't hear it if I tried to say it. She exhaled slowly. Why didn't you push harder? Why didn't you try to stop it? Because if I had, you would have defended him. Or her. Or the picture they painted, I said. You weren't ready to hear it yet. She was quiet again. Then, softly, I think I hated you for a while. Because you didn't fight harder. Because you didn't show up in the ways I expected. I know, I said. And I let you. Why? Because I knew the day would come when you'd call. And I didn't want you to feel like you had to apologize before I could listen. She didn't say anything, but I could hear her crying on the other end, quiet, steady, not the loud, jagged sobs of someone who's breaking. These were the tears of someone who finally let go of a weight they didn't know they'd been carrying. I don't even know who I married, she whispered. I could have said, you didn't. But that felt like cruelty dressed as wisdom. So instead I said, you know who you are now. That's what matters. We talked for nearly an hour after that. No raised voices. No long monologues. Just unraveling. Years of misunderstanding, small betrayals, quiet griefs. We talked about the house we built together, back when it was the three of us and Lila would dance in the hallway in socks. We talked about the way Monica slowly redrew the lines of the family until I was on the outside. We talked about how sometimes love is silent, but that doesn't mean it disappears. It just waits. By the time we hung up, it was after 3 a.m. The house was still. The frozen frame was still on my screen. But I didn't need to look at it anymore. Because something else had taken its place, her voice. Real, raw, reaching. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like a father again. The morning after the call with Lila, the sky was overcast in that quiet, stubborn way where the sun never fully commits to showing up. I didn't sleep. I hadn't even tried. My suit jacket was still slung over the arm of the couch, the tie coiled like a question mark on the coffee table. The laptop was closed now, the frozen frame sealed behind a black screen, but it was still playing in my head. Lila's face mid-scream, the glass mid-flight, Monica's expression twisted into something unrecognizable, and Camden, always the coward, always turning away. But this morning, I didn't want to sit in that image anymore. I needed to stand in it. To walk into the mess they left behind, not as a guest, not as an intruder, but as the father of the bride, uninvited but no longer invisible. I drove out to the venue just before noon. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I didn't call ahead or check if anyone would be there. I just got in the car and drove. The place was out by the edge of town, nestled between sloping vineyards and a man-made lake that never looked quite real. The kind of place with filtered water in the fountains and overpriced hors d'oeuvres on trays that no one eats because they're too polite to chew in photos. I pulled up to the front gravel drive, past the wrought iron gates and manicured hedges, and parked just off the circular loop, where tired florists and catering trucks were finishing their exit choreography. No one stopped me. No one asked who I was. I walked in through the side path like I belonged there. And for once, I didn't care if I did or not. The wreckage was still visible, but carefully managed. Half the archway had already been taken down, the gauzy fabric bundled into plastic bins. The staff moved like people erasing a crime scene, deliberate, fast, emotionless. Petals were being swept up into bags. Chairs were stacked. And off to the far end of the lawn, by the crushed grass where the reception tables had been, a few workers were hosing down a dark stain on the flagstone, wine or blood. I couldn't tell. Either way, it was the kind of thing they didn't want on record. I stepped through the garden walk and into the event hall. It was quieter inside. Cooler, like the air hadn't quite caught up to the aftermath. The chandeliers were still dimmed, casting soft, ghost-like glows on the polished floor. The dessert table had been stripped bare. A lone cupcake wrapper lay curled like a shell, the only survivor. And in the far corner, next to the wall of tall glass windows, I saw her, Monica. She was in sunglasses, even though we were indoors and the sun hadn't made a full appearance all morning. Her posture was stiff, arms crossed tightly over a beige sweater that looked borrowed, or maybe just hastily chosen. She was arguing with someone I didn't recognize, maybe the photographer, maybe the venue manager. I didn't care enough to find out. Her voice was sharp, flat, the kind of voice she used when she didn't get her way in a boutique or when a waiter brought the wrong wine. You need to delete the backups, she was saying. We don't need a record of that disaster. It's a liability. And then she turned and saw me. She froze. Completely. Like I was a hallucination the morning hadn't finished shaking off. Her mouth parted, then closed again. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, hands in my pockets, heart calm in a way I didn't expect. For a few seconds, we stared at each other in the middle of that half-emptied room. surrounded by wilting flowers and the stale perfume of yesterday's luxury. "You got what you wanted," she said finally, bitterness dripping from every syllable. I didn't flinch. "What exactly do you think I wanted?" Her jaw tensed. "You didn't want her to marry him." "You're right," I said. "But that's not what I wanted yesterday. Yesterday, I wanted a seat at my daughter's wedding." Monica looked away, pulling her sweater tighter around herself like she could shrink into it. "It wouldn't have helped. You would have made it worse." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how absurd it sounded now, in this hollowed-out palace of pretend. Worse than what? The bride crying in front of 100 people? The groom walking out? You screaming across the table like a Real Housewives audition? She said nothing. I took a step closer, but not threatening, just enough so she couldn't pretend I was part of the scenery. "You always said I didn't fit in rooms like this," I said. "But look around, Monica. These rooms weren't built for love. They were built for photos, for appearances. And now look where we are." Her chin lifted slightly, a reflex she'd honed over years of arguments. Keep the face calm, keep the spine straight, never let them see the tremble. "You think this proves you were right?" she asked. "No," I replied. "It proves you were wrong." The photographer or planner or whoever he was cleared his throat awkwardly and excused himself. Monica didn't try to stop him. She just stood there, silent now, like all the words had run dry. I turned to leave, but before I did, I said one last thing. "You tried to erase me. From the photos, the schedule, the story. But you couldn't erase the truth. Lila saw it. The world saw it. And I'm not the one they're pointing fingers at." I left her standing there, alone, surrounded by the wreckage she helped build. That night, Lila texted. Just a few words, but heavy. "Thank you for not saying, 'I told you so.'" I stared at the message for a while before replying. "You don't say that to someone already in pieces." She responded with a single heart emoji. That was it. But it meant more than paragraphs. I didn't sleep much that night either. But it wasn't from anger or restlessness. It was something softer, like the slow quiet that follows a storm. The air's still wet, the ground messy, but there's peace in the honesty of it. No more pretending the sky was always blue. No more holding your breath in case the clouds overhear. For so long, I tried to be the man who didn't make waves. I thought being steady meant being silent. That showing up, paying bills, staying married, even when it hurt, meant I had done my part. But standing in that empty venue, looking at the cleanup crew scraping glitter and glass from the floor, I realized something I hadn't dared say out loud. I had let myself become invisible. I let Monica shrink me down to what was convenient for her narrative. I let Lila drift into that world of curated perfection without anchoring her to truth. I thought love would carry the weight of everything I didn't say. But love isn't quiet. Love is presence. Love is hard words when they're needed. Love is standing in the wreckage and saying, "I'm still here." Lila had seen it now, and she was reaching for me through the dust. Not because I demanded it, but because I had never left. And now, finally, neither had she. Weeks passed. The story faded from the spotlight the way all things do once the next spectacle took over. Another public meltdown, another high society scandal, someone else's curated life cracking open for the internet to dissect. The wedding that wasn't slowly fell from people's feeds and mouths. The guests moved on. The planners deleted the gallery link. The venue pretended it never happened. But I didn't move on. I couldn't. Not because I was stuck in the past, but because the past, for once, was finally giving way to something I'd stopped hoping for. My daughter coming back to me, not out of guilt or need, but out of truth. That Sunday started like any other. I made coffee slowly, out of habit more than hunger. I wasn't expecting visitors. My mornings were still quiet, shaped by routine and the echo of a home that had once held more noise, more laughter, more questions shouted from the hallway. I thought I'd spend the day fixing the squeaky gate out front, or finally going through the closet full of Lila's old things I hadn't touched in years. But then came the knock. It was soft, hesitant, but it wasn't a stranger's knock. It had rhythm, memory. I knew it before I even reached the door. And there she was, Lila, standing on my porch, hair pulled into a loose bun, no makeup, no layers of expectation or performance. Just my daughter. She wasn't carrying flowers. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even wearing shoes that matched. But her presence filled the doorway like sunlight after weeks of rain. For a second, neither of us spoke. We just stared. I saw her eyes flinch a little, maybe waiting for judgment, For the quiet rebuke I had every right to hand her. But I gave her none. I stepped aside, and she walked in like she had never stopped belonging here. "I'm not married," she said as she set her tote bag down on the entry bench. In case that wasn't obvious. I raised an eyebrow. "You didn't just come to make that announcement, did you?" She shook her head. "I came to ask for pancakes. That was it. Not a dramatic speech. Not an apology wrapped in philosophical reflection. Just pancakes." And it made me smile in a way I hadn't let myself in months. We moved around the kitchen like muscle memory. She grabbed the eggs. I got the flour. She mixed while I flipped. And in between measuring spoons and quiet laughter, the air between us softened. It didn't need to be dissected. We didn't need to talk about Monica or Camden or the family dinners that were never really family. We were building something else, right there over a stovetop and the smell of browning butter. She talked. I listened. She talked about how strange it felt waking up the next morning and realizing she didn't miss him. How her first instinct wasn't to cry but to breathe, like she'd been holding her lungs hostage for too long. She admitted the whole engagement had been driven by momentum, not love. She felt like everyone was waiting for her to reach some imagined pinnacle of perfection: career, marriage, legacy. Camden looked good on paper. Monica approved. The Whitmores were clean, wealthy, respectable. It all aligned. Until it didn't. "I was so sure it was me," she said, wiping syrup from her wrist with a napkin. "That I was the problem. That I didn't know how to love right, or how to be loved." And then, in that one moment, when he walked away, I realized I'd been trying to fit into a version of myself I didn't even like. I nodded. The mask never fits for long. She glanced at me, eyes narrowing in that way she used to when she was little and trying to solve a puzzle. "How did you know?" I leaned back in my chair. "Because I watched you shrinking." "Why didn't you stop me?" she asked again. Same question as that night on the phone, but this time not as accusation, as curiosity, as grief. "Because if I pulled you out too soon," I said, "you might have gone back. And I needed you to leave on your own terms. Not out of fear. Out of clarity." She stared at her plate. That frozen frame changed everything. I knew exactly which one she meant. "I saw my face," she said, "and I didn't recognize it. That wasn't a woman in love. That was a woman about to break. And I think, deep down, I knew it was coming. I just didn't want to disappoint everyone." "You didn't disappoint me," I said. She looked up, and her eyes shimmered just enough to sting. "I thought I did. For years. You thought wrong." She reached across the table, not with words, but with her hand, fingertips grazing mine the way she used to when she was nervous before a recital. And just like that, we closed the gap. Not perfectly, not instantly, but real. We moved to the balcony later, plates cleared, coffee mugs warm in our hands. The sky had brightened slightly. That gentle kind of spring light that doesn't demand attention but lingers. We sat in silence for a while, both of us letting the breeze do some of the talking. And then she spoke again, quieter now. "You knew, didn't you?" she asked. I took a sip of coffee. "About Camden?" She nodded. "I knew he wasn't good for you," I said. "But I also knew you had to see it yourself." "I hated that," she said. "That you were just waiting. I thought it meant you didn't care." "And now?" She breathed out slowly. "Now I realize it meant you cared enough not to get in the way of the lesson." I looked at her then, not just the woman she had become, but the girl she used to be. The one who used to crawl into bed next to me during thunderstorms. The one who used to sneak extra syrup on her pancakes when Monica wasn't looking. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't see someone fractured by disappointment. I saw someone ready to rebuild. She turned toward me, legs curled beneath her, her voice steadier now. "I don't want to rebuild the version of life I thought I was supposed to have. I want something quieter, realer, and I want you in it." My throat tightened. I didn't say anything right away because I couldn't, not without risking a crack in my voice. But she didn't need a speech. She just needed me to stay. So I did. The rest of the afternoon moved gently. We went through old photo albums. Ones Monica had boxed up and pushed into storage because they didn't match the modern aesthetic. Lila laughed at her own braces, at my outdated clothes, at the messy birthday parties with crooked cakes and paper crowns. We didn't talk about the wedding again. We didn't need to. It was done. Buried beneath a pile of flowers no one saved and promises no one kept. What came next was ours to build. She asked about the garden. If I still planted tomatoes. If the swing in the backyard still held. She said she might stop by next week with a few recipe books. She wanted to learn how to cook without a microwave. I told her she could burn every dish, and I'd still show up for seconds. And just before she left, standing at the front door in the golden hush of early evening, she turned and asked, "Do you think it's too late to start over?" I shook my head. Starting over is just another way of coming home. She smiled, this time not for anyone else. Not for the cameras. Just for me. And it reached her eyes. It's strange what a paused screen can reveal. Most people would have seen a wedding gone wrong, a disaster caught mid-flight, a day derailed. But I saw something else. I saw a daughter waking up, a wife revealing her truest self under pressure, and a man, me, no longer waiting to be included in a world that had no intention of ever making space for him. That frozen frame, with all its jagged truth and unflinching stillness, gave me more clarity than any conversation ever had. And in the quiet weeks that followed, I found myself no longer aching to rewind, but finally able to breathe. Lila came by every Sunday after that. Not out of obligation, not as part of a schedule carved into some courtroom custody agreement, but because she wanted to. She brought groceries sometimes, her new dog other times. A rescue mutt with too much energy and a bark that didn't quite match its size. We made pancakes. We talked about books, music, places she wanted to visit, places I'd only ever seen in pictures. The tension that once choked the air between us had vanished, replaced by something far more sacred, presence without performance. And then there was Jonah. The first time she mentioned him, it was casual, just a name dropped between sentences, like he wasn't anything special yet. A teacher. Quiet. Kind-hearted. Someone who laughed with his eyes, she said. I caught the softness in her voice when she said it. Not infatuation. Not the breathless rush she'd had with Camden. This was something slower. Grounded. Earned. I met him a month later over dinner, grilled chicken, mismatched napkins, a dog licking crumbs off Jonah's shoe. He looked me in the eye when we shook hands. Not a power move. Not a performance. Just honest connection. He didn't try to impress me. And somehow, that impressed me more than anything Camden had ever said. Lila smiled a lot that night. Not the curated kind. The kind that came from her chest and spilled out before she could even think to hide it. And as I watched her pass Jonah the salt, her fingers brushing his like it was the most natural thing in the world, I realized something. She had finally found someone who saw her, not just someone who wanted to show her off. And that made all the difference. Monica? We don't speak anymore. She moved in with her sister in Boston. There were a few emails at first, mostly formal, mostly tied to logistics. Finalizing the divorce. Splitting what was left. Arranging signatures. Her tone was crisp, distant, still more concerned with narrative than closure. I didn't answer most of them. I let my lawyer do the talking. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. Anger is loud, and I had lived in silence long enough to know its absence is more powerful. What would I say anyway? That she won? She didn't. That she broke something? She did. But she also revealed something. And for that, strangely, I'm grateful. Because now, I don't wake up wondering how to be enough for a woman who never really wanted me as I was. I don't shrink myself to fit into spaces that were never designed with me in mind. I tend my garden. I fix what's broken around the house. I sit on the porch with coffee I don't have to rush through, and I let the mornings pass without apology. That frozen frame, Lila mid-scream, Monica mid-panic, Camden mid-retreat, still exists on my laptop. I haven't deleted it. I haven't looked at it in weeks either. Not because I'm avoiding it, but because I no longer need it to remember what's real. That image doesn't haunt me. It grounded me. It gave me proof that I wasn't crazy, that the years I spent watching, listening, loving from the background weren't wasted, they were seen. Eventually. And that's enough. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Now, on Sundays, when Lila lets herself in and tosses her keys on the entry table like she used to in high school, we don't talk about what happened. We talk about what's next. She's thinking of going back to school. Maybe teaching. Maybe writing. She says Jonah encourages her, not in the push you till you break way Monica used to, but in a way that feels like sunlight on a seed. Quiet. Consistent. Undeniable. She asked me once if I would ever get married again. I told her I didn't know. That maybe love, for me, wouldn't look like wedding bells and champagne anymore. Maybe it would look like Sunday pancakes and peace. Like soft mornings with a book in a quiet house that finally felt like mine. And she smiled. Not out of pity, not out of worry, but because she understood. There's a stillness in my life now. Not the kind born from loneliness, but from clarity. I know who I am. I know what I've given. And I know, finally, that the absence of noise isn't the absence of worth. It's the presence of truth. Lila sees that now. She sees me. And she stays, not because she has to, but because she chooses to. And that, more than any invitation, is what I always wanted.